The stars had seen many civilizations rise and fall. Across the endless void, species clawed their way to dominance, only to crumble beneath the weight of their own hubris. The Zalari, a race of long-lived scholars and strategists, had watched them all. From their hidden citadels orbiting dying stars, they observed and recorded, ensuring that no unknown threat could ever disturb their supremacy. For millennia, they had studied Earth with detached amusement. Its inhabitants, bipedal, fragile, chaotic, were nothing more than another primitive anomaly in a galaxy full of lesser beings. They fought among themselves endlessly, their history a cycle of war, destruction, and rebuilding. To the Zalari, this was proof of their inferiority. A species so consumed by violence could never reach the stars, never pose a threat. The Zalari had once feared an ancient prophecy, one that spoke of the first warrior species, a race that would not rise through diplomacy or careful expansion, but through sheer, unstoppable force. It would be a species so ruthless, so resilient, that by the time the galaxy realized its mistake, it would already be too late. For centuries, the Zalari had searched for this species. They had found nothing. Empires rose, empires fell, and no force emerged that could not be contained. The prophecy became a myth, a story told to caution against complacency. And so, when their long-range probes detected Earth's wars, its nuclear fire, its endless conflicts, they laughed. These creatures? The first warrior species? Impossible. They were too emotional, too reckless, too self-destructive. They would burn themselves out before they ever became a threat. Yet something gnawed at the edges of their certainty. As decades passed, humanity defied every expectation. Wars ended, only for new ones to begin, each one refining their strategies, sharpening their weapons. Disease, disaster, even the vacuum of space itself, nothing stopped them. Where others faltered, they adapted. Where others surrendered, they endured. The Zalari had seen civilizations stagnate for millennia, but humanity was different. They evolved too quickly, their hunger for progress insatiable. By the time the Zalari truly began to question their conclusions, it was already too late. A lone observer, stationed in a cloaked vessel above Earth, stared at his data screen in growing dread. The latest reports were undeniable. Humanity had surpassed critical thresholds, technological, psychological, and tactical. The pieces were all there. The prophecy they had dismissed for so long had come to pass. He sent an urgent transmission to the Zalari High Council. We were wrong. The first warrior species has already awakened. The Zalari High Council did not react with the urgency the observer had hoped for. They dismissed his warnings, just as they had dismissed the prophecy for generations. Humanity is primitive, they said. They fight because they lack control. They advance because they have no patience. But they are nothing more than clever savages. Let them reach the stars, and they will crumble like all the others. The observer knew better. He had spent years stationed above Earth, watching, analyzing, studying the patterns of war and peace. These creatures were different. Their violence was not a symptom of chaos, but of refinement. Every war honed them, every setback made them stronger. And so, when the council refused to act, the observer made a decision of his own. A small Zalari scouting team was sent to Earth in disguise. Their mission was simple: walk among the humans, witness their ways firsthand, and report back with undeniable proof. Arrival on Earth. They landed under cover of night, their biosuits shifting to mimic human appearances. To any passerby, they looked like ordinary men, their features unremarkable. Their neural translators allowed them to understand and communicate effortlessly. For days, they observed. At first, their assumptions were confirmed: humans were loud, impulsive, and deeply emotional. They argued over trivial matters, laughed inappropriately, and seemed to act without logic. One scout, disguised as a businessman, watched a heated argument between two men outside a small restaurant. Their voices rose, their gestures sharp and aggressive. The Zalari prepared to witness a violent confrontation. Instead, the men suddenly broke into laughter, clapped each other on the back, and walked inside together as friends. The scout frowned. That was unexpected. Another scout, posing as a student, observed a group of children at play. They chased one another, tackled, shouted, and wrestled in the dirt, their faces lit with excitement. At first, it seemed primitive. Why waste energy on such reckless movement? But the scout noticed something troubling. Their play was strategic. They flanked, they misled, they adapted. Even as children, humans instinctively learn tactics. It was a game, but it was also a lesson in warfare. The final scout infiltrated a military training facility, using advanced stealth technology to observe undetected. Here, they expected to see true human weakness. Surely, their drills would be crude, their combat techniques inefficient. Instead, they watched in stunned silence as human soldiers ran grueling simulations, pushed their bodies past logical limits, and executed maneuvers that no Zalari warrior could match. These were not mere brutes, these were strategists, tacticians, survivors. And then, the real test came. The fight. The scouts gathered in a crowded city district one evening, discussing their findings. They were still skeptical. Yes, humanity was unpredictable, but could they truly be the warriors the prophecy foretold? Then they heard the scream. A mugger had targeted a lone woman, attempting to steal her belongings. It was a moment the scouts had seen on many worlds, strong preying upon weak, a simple, expected outcome. But this time, something different happened. Before the mugger could flee, a nearby human, a bystander with no connection to the woman, stepped forward. The mugger turned his weapon on him, shouting a threat. The bystander did not hesitate. He moved. Faster than the scouts expected, faster than their calculations predicted. He closed the distance in an instant, struck with perfect precision, and disarmed the mugger with brutal efficiency. The fight was over in seconds. The Zalari did not just see skill. They saw something else: instinct, adaptability, fearlessness. They saw a glimpse of what humanity truly was. And for the first time, the scouts felt something their kind had not felt in millennia. Fear. They returned to their ship that night, silent and uneasy. Their mission was complete, but their understanding of the universe had changed forever. Humanity was not just violent. They were designed for war. And worse, they thrived in it. The Zalari scouts returned to their concealed ship orbiting Earth, their minds racing. The human they had witnessed disarming the mugger was not a soldier, not a warrior by profession, just an ordinary citizen. If even their civilians possessed such instincts, what did that say about their true potential? But there was another question that troubled the scouts even more. What drives them? Most warlike species the Zalari had encountered were driven by power, domination, or survival. But humans didn't just fight for themselves. They fought for others, complete strangers, families, ideas. The scouts needed to understand why. The study of emotion. Rather than focusing on military training and combat scenarios, the scouts turned their attention to something the Zalari had long dismissed as irrelevant: human emotion. One scout embedded himself in a hospital, posing as a doctor's assistant. He watched as humans cared for the injured, stayed by the bedsides of the sick, and worked tirelessly to save lives, even at great personal cost. He saw a man, exhausted, trembling, covered in soot, rushing through the hospital doors with a small child in his arms. The man had run into a burning building to save a stranger's child. His body was broken, lungs scorched, but he smiled through the pain when he was told the child would survive. The scout felt something. A strange, foreign sensation. The Zalari did not have a word for it. Another scout infiltrated a disaster relief site after a devastating earthquake. He expected chaos, desperation, and selfishness. Instead, he saw unity. Humans formed search parties, dug through rubble with bare hands, and shared their supplies without hesitation. He watched as a man, exhausted and dehydrated, passed his last sip of water to a child before collapsing from fatigue. Another sensation, just as alien as the first, settled within the scout's mind. The final scout followed a grieving widow as she visited a cemetery. She placed flowers on a grave, whispered something too soft to hear, and wept quietly. But she did not stay broken. She wiped her tears, squared her shoulders, and walked away, not in despair, but with determination. Loss did not destroy humans. It fueled them. The internal conflict. The scouts convened aboard their ship, their reports uneasy. Human emotions are not weaknesses, one finally admitted. They are something else. The leader of the mission, once certain of humanity's savagery, found himself at a loss. These creatures were not merely warriors. They were something far worse, warriors with a reason to fight. If we act against them now, another scout murmured, we may only make them stronger. That was the moment doubt crept into their mission. They had come to confirm humanity's danger. Instead, they had begun to admire it. And one scout, more than any of the others, began to wonder if the Zalari had made a terrible mistake by ever considering humans an enemy. The Zalari scouts returned to their homeworld in silence, their minds burdened with the knowledge of what they had witnessed. They had expected to see an unrefined, primitive species, brutal and chaotic. Instead, they had seen something far more terrifying. Humans were not merely warriors. They were warriors with a cause. They fought not just for survival, but for one another. For justice. For hope. This realization troubled the Zalari High Council more than any fleet of warships ever could. A forgotten warning. The scouts stood before the Elder Council in the Great Chamber, their accounts relayed in hushed tones. The chamber was vast and ancient, its walls etched with thousands of years of Zalari history. But one inscription, near the center, caught the attention of the eldest among them. A prophecy. A warning that had been carved into their records long before any living Zalari had drawn breath. The elder traced a gnarled finger along the lines of text, his expression darkening with every word. From the unlikeliest of worlds shall rise the first warriors. Their battlefields will be endless, their struggles unending, and from their hardship will be born a force that cannot be tamed. They shall wield fire and fury, but their greatest weapon shall be their hearts. The chamber grew silent as the elder turned to the scouts. His voice, though old and wavering, carried the weight of centuries. Do they match the prophecy? The lead scout hesitated. Then, he nodded. Yes, elder. The humans are exactly as foretold. A ripple of unease spread through the council. For generations, the Zalari had dismissed the prophecy as myth. A tale meant to frighten younglings into obedience. Now, faced with undeniable evidence, they realized their mistake. A critical choice. Debate erupted within the council. Some argued that humanity must be destroyed before they reached their full potential. If left unchecked, they could one day rise as the greatest power in the galaxy. Others hesitated. We are not yet enemies, one council member pointed out. They know nothing of us. They have not declared war. We act out of fear, not necessity. And if we wait, another countered. If we allow them to expand, to grow, what then? The elder remained silent, his eyes still fixed on the prophecy. He knew the truth. The Zalari had long believed themselves to be the dominant force in the galaxy, but they had never faced a species like this before. To attack now might bring victory. But if they failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. We will observe them further, the elder finally decreed. We will watch, we will learn. And if we must act. He exhaled slowly. Then we will act before it is too late. The decision was made. But deep in his heart, the elder suspected that they had already run out of time. The Zalari's decision to observe humanity was meant to be a safeguard. A way to understand this unpredictable species before taking drastic action. But as the years passed, their unease only deepened. Every attempt to predict human behavior ended in failure. Every assumption they made proved wrong. And worst of all, their greatest fears were beginning to come true. Subtle manipulation. The Zalari, desperate to curb humanity's rise without provoking open conflict, began interfering in subtle ways. They manipulated human technology, slowing down progress where they could. They fueled divisions among nations, ensuring humanity remained distracted with internal strife. They sowed chaos in secret, believing that humanity's fragile unity would shatter under enough pressure. For a while, it seemed to work. Wars broke out. Distrust spread. Technological advancements stalled. The Zalari Council watched in satisfaction, confident that they had delayed the inevitable. Then, humanity did what it always did. It adapted. Forged in fire. Rather than crumble under the pressure, humanity thrived in it. Every attempt to divide them only pushed them toward greater innovation. Every hardship they endured became fuel for their relentless progress. In a matter of decades, humanity had not only recovered from every setback, their technology had leapt forward faster than before. A breakthrough in space travel. An unexpected unity among former enemies. A surge in scientific discovery driven by necessity. The Zalari watched in horror as their interference backfired. By trying to stunt humanity's growth, they had only made them stronger. The panic sets in. This was not supposed to happen. The words, spoken by a high-ranking Zalari official, echoed through the great chamber. The council had gathered once more, but this time, their confidence was gone. We must act now, another council member insisted. Before they become unstoppable. It may already be too late, an elder muttered, staring at the ancient prophecy once more. A chilling realization settled over the chamber. Humanity had reached the point of no return. They were no longer an emerging power. They were the power. And if the Zalari did not strike soon, they might never have another chance. A desperate decision. The debate was short. There was no longer time for patience, no room for hesitation. The Zalari would strike. No more subtle manipulations. No more watching from the shadows. This time, they would unleash their full strength. They would break humanity before it was too late. Or so they thought. The Zalari had miscalculated before, but this time, they believed there would be no mistake. They had studied every human war, every tactic, every weakness. They had seen humanity's resilience firsthand, but resilience meant nothing in the face of overwhelming force. This would be swift. Decisive. Unquestionable. Or so they thought. The first strike. Without warning, the Zalari fleet descended upon Earth. They bypassed humanity's defenses with superior technology, targeting critical infrastructure, communication networks, and military installations in a simultaneous, planet-wide assault. Within minutes, power grids flickered out, satellites went dark, and supply chains collapsed. Governments scrambled. Leaders were cut off. The world plunged into chaos. The Zalari watched from orbit, expecting panic. Expecting surrender. Instead, they saw something else entirely. The human response. Within hours, humanity had adapted. Old communication methods, radio, physical messengers, even handwritten orders, came back into use. Decentralized leadership took over, with individuals stepping up to organize their communities. Militaries, despite being crippled, launched immediate counteroffensives. And ordinary civilians, unarmed, untrained, began to fight back in ways the Zalari could never have anticipated. They saw human engineers repurposing disabled alien tech within days. They saw soldiers using guerrilla tactics so unpredictable that even the Zalari's advanced simulations failed to predict them. They saw human pilots taking to the skies in outdated aircraft, overwhelming superior ships through sheer tenacity and suicidal precision. Every battle was costly. Every victory was hard-fought. But humanity did not break. They adapted. They endured. They fought. Fear takes hold. The Zalari command, watching from the safety of their warships, had never felt fear before. But now, watching human soldiers refuse to surrender, watching civilians pick up fallen weapons without hesitation, watching entire cities rally in defiance. They understood. This was not a species that could be conquered. This was not a species that knew when to quit. They had thought humanity was primitive. They had thought humanity was unprepared. They had thought humanity would crumble under their might. They were wrong. The humans did not fight for power, or for conquest, or for survival alone. They fought for each other. For their families. For their home. And that, more than anything, made them unstoppable. The final stand. The war raged for weeks. The Zalari fleet, once so confident, found itself struggling. Every time they adapted, humanity countered. Every strategy they deployed, humans dismantled. And in the final hours of the conflict, as the last Zalari warships prepared a desperate orbital bombardment, they received an unexpected transmission. A message from Earth. A simple, chilling declaration. This is our home. And we are not afraid of you. Then, from the surface, came a final, devastating strike. A human-led assault that shattered the Zalari's fleet and sent their forces retreating into the depths of space. The impossible had happened. Humanity had won. The aftermath. The surviving Zalari fled, their belief in their own superiority shattered. Their empire, once unquestioned, now knew fear. And in the heart of their command chamber, an elder stared at the ancient prophecy one last time. The words, long dismissed as myth, now felt like a warning they had ignored for too long. The first warriors will not conquer the stars. They will defend them. Humanity was never meant to rule through fear. They were meant to inspire. To protect. And now, as the Zalari drifted into the void, they could only wonder. Had they just witnessed the beginning of something even greater? The war was over. But the battle had changed everything. The Zalari fleet had been defeated, not through sheer strength, not through advanced technology, but through something far more terrifying, the unyielding will of humanity. The surviving Zalari retreated, their once unshakable confidence reduced to a silent, lingering fear. And yet, humanity did not pursue them. They did not seek revenge. They did not demand retribution. Instead, they mourned their fallen. They rebuilt. And they prepared, not for conquest, but for what would come next. Because humanity, for the first time, knew the truth. They were the first warriors. But they were not destroyers. They were something more. The Zalari's final revelation. Deep within the Zalari homeworld, the elders gathered in silent contemplation. They had always believed that war was a tool of lesser species. That peace was only achieved through control. But humanity had shattered that belief. They had shown that true strength was not in domination, but in the bonds between individuals. In their unity. Their relentless spirit. Their refusal to surrender not just their land, but their values. And as the elder studied the ancient prophecy once more, he realized something. They had feared humanity for the wrong reasons. They had believed the prophecy warned of a destructive force. But it had never said that humanity would conquer. It had never said they would destroy. It had only said they would rise. The first warriors will not conquer the stars. They will defend them. The Zalari had come to stop a threat. Instead, they had awakened a guardian. Humanity's future. On Earth, the world was healing. Cities that had been reduced to rubble were rebuilt with new purpose. Enemies who had once stood divided now stood together. And in the quiet moments after the war, something new emerged. A sense of destiny. For the first time, humanity understood what it meant to stand at the edge of something greater. The stars were no longer just a mystery to explore. They were a responsibility. A place to protect. And as the first human ships prepared to venture beyond the Sol system, one message echoed across the cosmos. A warning. A promise. We are here. And we will never fall. Because humanity had never been the greatest threat to the galaxy. They had always been its greatest hope.